All right, so this question comes from section 1.8. It says to solve this linear inequality and express the solution using interval notation. So when we have, this is not an equation, but it's an inequality. And when you have an inequality, that means that the expression, well, the inequality, it contains not the equal sign like an equation, but it has these symbols. One of these four symbols. This symbol is the greater than symbol. And this symbol is the less than symbol. This symbol is the greater than symbol with a half of an equal sign. So it's called the greater than or equal to symbol. And this is the less than symbol with a half of an equal sign. So it's called the less than or equal to. And so here we have 2x is less than or equal to 5. When you are solving inequalities, they work very similar to an equation. So if you want to isolate x onto one side of the inequality, the only difference is if you multiply or divide by a negative number, it will flip the inequality. So let's just write that to the side. If you multiply or divide by a negative number, it will flip the inequality. So, and just like if I had an x plus or minus a number with an equation, I would try to isolate the x by adding or subtracting, doing the opposite to both sides. In this case, we have 2x, and 2 is multiplied by the x. So I want to get rid of the 2 here because I want to get x by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And when I divide both sides by 2, I'll be left with 1x, and that will be less than or equal to 5/2, or written as a decimal, 2.5. So we want to make sure that we are using, put our answer, if the WebAssign asks us in a certain way to express it as a fraction or a decimal. If it doesn't specify, it should take both. It asks for us to express the solution in interval notation. So interval notation is this, where we're going to express this as a range of numbers on the number line. And you put the smaller number to the left, you put the larger number to the right, and then you have to choose either a parenthesis or a bracket on both sides based on whether it includes the endpoint or not. So when you have a greater than symbol, it's an open endpoint, meaning it does not include that number. And we would express a greater than symbol with a parenthesis and an arrow to the right on the number line. And so in my interval notation, it would also be a parenthesis. The less than symbol, open, does not include the endpoint. So this also would be a parenthesis on my interval notation. On the number line, it would be a parenthesis and an arrow to the left. Also, sometimes instead of a parenthesis and an arrow, you will see an open circle. Depends on the book. So either the parenthesis or open circle on the number line. And then with the greater than or equal to and less than or equal to, well, these are considered closed intervals. Closed intervals include the endpoint, meaning it can be that number or above with the greater than or equal to symbol. So that is a closed dot or a bracket and an arrow to the right. And this would be a bracket with the arrow to the left for less than or equal to, or a bracket on the interval notation. So when I go to draw this on my number line, it's going to look something like this. So first I have to have my number, I have to define what these tick marks are. So I'm going to say this is 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Numbers that go to the left are going to negative infinity, and numbers that go to the right are going to positive infinity. In here, we've got 2.5, so I got to find 2.5 on my number line. This is 2, this is 4, so this, even though it's not notated, this would be 3. This would be 1. So we could mark those if we wanted to. And then 2.5 is halfway between 2 and 3, so right in the center here, I am going to put either a closed dot or a bracket. I believe WebAssign will use a bracket, but we'll take a look at it. And then because this is less than or equal to, it's going to be the numbers that are below 2.5. Oops, I put that in the wrong spot. 2.5 is here. So between 2 and 3, and then an arrow to the left. And if it doesn't want a bracket on the number line, the other option is a closed dot, so a solid dot with an arrow to the left. Now I want to point out what I was mentioning with this interval notation. So the smaller number to the left, the larger endpoint to the right. Here I have I don't have an endpoint, right? It's going off to negative infinity. So I'm going to say negative infinity. That's the concept of the smallest number, up to 2.5. I'm going to put a bracket here because it includes 2.5 because of the symbol. And I'm going to put a parenthesis. Negative infinity or positive infinity will always have a parenthesis. It's an open-ended area. So now let's pull WebAssign over and let's take a look at how they do it. So I'm going to pull this over to see what they use. And I've got WebAssign here. And so I'm going to, when I click here, it shows me, it pulls up a menu here, and I'm going to say X. And I want some symbols. So click, let's see, functions, symbols, relations. Oh, there it is. Okay, I need less than or equal to, and then I'm going to put 2.5. And then over here, now I'm going to go to graph it, and I want a closed circle, and I want in between 2 and 3. So I'm going to try to do right there in the very center. And then I'm going to see, let's see how else, let's see, what can I draw? And when I click, so I click the draw button and I click it draws this arrow. And then let's hit submit answer, and let's see if that is how it wants us to submit it. And so when I see this, I see I got a red X here, but I got a green check here. So I did this one wrong. So let me see, what did I do wrong here? So solve the linear inequality. Oh, express the solution using interval notation. Okay, so interval notation, the way I wrote it was the inequality. I want interval notation. So let's go and let's write this, and I can use the, just like I wrote it on the paper, the parenthesis on the left side, and then let's look through here and see if we can find the infinity symbol. I want to hit the negative sign on the keyboard, infinity, comma. You gotta make sure I put those commas in, and then I'm going to put 2.5, and then I'm going to put bracket. The bracket is found on the keyboard. And now I'm going to hit submit answer again, and let's see if now this is correct. And so now I got a green check mark here, I got a green check mark here, and so I did it correctly, and I got all of the points that were available for that problem. Now, one last thing, I had mentioned this at the beginning. If you multiply or divide by a negative number, it flips the inequality. So if this problem, let's say that this problem was different. Let's say that we had the problem 2x is, or let's say negative 2x is greater than 6. And I go to solve this problem. Well, I want to isolate the x. So I divide both sides by negative 2. And this is when this comes into play here. When you divide or multiply both sides by a negative number, you have to flip the inequality symbol. So this is going to be x is less than negative 3. So this symbol will flip. That is the only difference when you go to solve an inequality versus an equation. It's this right here. And now the symbol flips and I have this. So if I was to graph this, I would find negative 3 on my number line. This is less than, so it's going to be a parenthesis. And let me use what the WebAssign is using. They use the open circle. So open circle instead of parenthesis. But like I said, some books use a parenthesis, some books use the open circle. So open circle at negative 3 and then an arrow to the left. Written as interval notation, it would be negative infinity. This is going off to negative infinity to negative 3 with a parenthesis here because it does not include the endpoint in negative 3. It includes everything up to negative 3, but not negative 3 itself. So that's how you do this type of problem.